Yeah. I just had some questions I want to go over. Is it okay if I record this?
Oh yeah, that's fine.
All right, sweet. I just wanted to ask a lot of questions about Amethyst because I found it recently. Thought it was an amazing game, and there was just so much mystery that was involved in your game development stuff. As a game developer, I thought it was a great process what you did, and all the stuff that you've done. So I just wrote down some
Oh,
questions and stuff, and
appreciate it.
of course, and I did get. I already had two of the questions, but they got backed by another member in the community who's been around for like I think a little bit over a year. So they aren't just from a new person's perspective. So hopefully it's not a little bit too like easy questions.
Okay.
So first off, the style of the game is very unique, and I find it very interesting. And I was wondering if that was a pre-planned style you kind of went into, or if you developed it while you were just going along your path with the game.
Um, a little of both. Definitely the second one for sure, because you know, we kind of like built what we could,
Yeah, of
and the
course.
game did kind of go through like a few variations of itself. Like when you started out, you were more like a rock person,
Really,
not a skeleton. Yeah, the skeletons came later.
was there a story behind the rock people?
We were kind of just, we were working similarly with the like land long after,
I
um,
see.
the end of humanity. So I guess the rock people in our idea was kind of just like a person inhabited by spirits, or like a body inhabited by spirits.
Oh man, that sounds
It
awesome.
kind of
Yeah.
goes a lot with the name animist, because animism is kind of a in reference to kind of ancient beliefs that spirits could like possess things in the natural world.
Oh shit. Yeah. Okay. Well, now I see how I connected. How'd you come up with the skeletons in the first place? Because I thought that was a great storyline, like the whole plot for that. I thought it was very interesting and it was great for pulling people in. But how'd you come up with it? Like, at what point did you decide to switch over?
We probably the game was already out on Steam when we had switched over, so there was really like no story before that. But we fully built the map, the whole world like three times over, and I
Yeah,
think it was on our second variation. It was skeletons. So kind of like the world one, you were this rock person, and then the second variation, you were a skeleton. The cursed one's the like zombie
yeah.
corpse class. That one didn't come until the third world. So the third
Okay.
world is when the whole like faction system got put
Really?
in.
Okay, well, I have two more questions on just this topic alone, which is so the early game didn't have a story or factions. So what was your main focus? Because right now I feel like the big things are the factions and the story. So I'm wondering what your initial intentions were with the game.
It's kind of like a PvP sandbox.
I see.
So before we started building a game in Unity, we were like running our own server in Rust, like the
Yeah.
game. So like we ran a server there, we called it Animyst, and we like kind of modded it a lot, or installed mods other people made, kind of
Yeah.
customized stuff, and made this kind of like only primitive weapons, like PvP playground situation.
Ooh,
You
okay.
couldn't craft anything. The only things you can get were buying from the vending machines,
Okay, so
and we would have people trade skulls and bones from their opponents for weapons.
that actually sounds like a very interesting premise. So the game just started off as like a developer playground for you and him to like learn with.
Yeah, kind of. That's a good way of putting it. We really like had a lot of fun running our Rust server, and we kind of just wanted to like take it one step further, I guess.
Of course.
And I had never jumped into game dev of any sort. Had kind of minimal coding experience before that too,
Yeah.
and just kind of wanted to like take the plunge for the next step.
Well, that's a great intro story, and it's crazy to think that like it's come this far. From like a
Yeah,
Rust server, its own independent game with server hosting, its own community, and all that.
it's just persistence. I think
Yeah, for
that's the
sure.
biggest virtue there. You just like keep doing it.
Oh, for sure. I think that plays a big part in it. Um, well, my next question was what was the purpose of making Animist? I kind of got that one. So my next one is what's something you wish more people knew about the game that you don't think is publicly known?
That isn't publicly known. That's a good question. Like I really like that. Well, as far as just the gameplay goes, I really like that there are things that people might not have found or that only a few have found. We really like
Yeah.
the like shrouded in secrecy.
Oh, man, I
Um,
think I used that
but
exact same sentence later on in another question.
oh, really? That's
Yeah.
funny. But yeah, in general, I think that maybe the one thing that I wish everyone who jumped in the game knew is how like I don't know, just like how they could like figure out and like find a place to like maybe build. It's just kind of
Yeah.
like maybe there's a few like little things in the game that I think people would do well learning quicker, and that's just this is kind
That's
of the game loop. But I wish more people would know about the game in general, because it's kind
of
of
course.
just some deeply hidden
Well,
in
actually,
your
I could
free to
kind
play
of
Steam games.
I can kind of cut to another question I had about that actually. I was curious, do you like the fact that the game is so hidden? Like, I know you say you wish more people knew, but at the same time, there is a certain degree of other like outer computer wise that like there is a lot of secrecy in playing the game, not just in the development of it, like the way the game was built, but also just there's not enough information online to like make you get your secrets and questions answered fast, which I feel like is kind of a virtue to the game. That kind of secrecy about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I definitely like that it's maintained that, and yeah, part of it is because it's kind of an obscure game.
Yeah,
If there were a ton of people, maybe the wiki would take off or something. But I think mechanically the game kind of makes it hard to like to record a lot of information about
oh
it.
of course, yeah,
It's like the way the map works, and it's kind of like a drawing and not like an actual thing. There, sorry, my
oh you're
dog's
okay.
freaking out right now.
Oh good.
1 second. Come on, get inside. My bad. Got a
Oh you're
little
okay.
firecracker over here. Um, but yeah, I think like for a lot of people playing the game, it's a good experience that they can't like find everything in a wiki and all of that.
Yeah,
So that's definitely cool. And as we're kind of like working on our next game project, that's a
yeah,
big thing we're thinking about, where we're actually taking a lot of steps to obscure things even more.
really,
Yeah, like I don't want to say too much because we
yeah, of
haven't
course,
really even announced the name or anything of it yet, but we're really looking at a system where the stats of things aren't necessarily recorded by numbers. There's no like readable values to tell
yeah.
what's better. Things,
Huh.
many things that are only represented by images and have no verbal names.
So there's a lot of just fuck around and find out. You're not gonna know much
Yeah,
information about the stuff. Yeah.
exactly. Because that's kind of the experience.
Well,
The
yeah. I mean, it
it's
made.
not
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not like, this like PvP or like fighting and killing all the time. The
of
the
course.
creatures are kind of more there to be farmed than to
Yeah,
it's not like a Dark Souls kind of
yeah. It's not a
experience in
priority.
terms of the PV. It's more about like the long walks in the desert and
Yeah,
like finding your way, finding some meaning for yourself like in
of
the
course.
desert.
Well, I think that is a common thing also with the creatures in the game is the fact that they kind of just they guard areas off in a sandbox map really really well because they level so like evenly. Like the higher level you get, the more you'll be able to go a distance, even though you're always having access to it, which I think makes it more intriguing.
hmm Yeah, I think, a lot of it we really like games where there isn't this huge gap between like the really geared people and the
Yeah,
noobs either. Like we kind of want to keep like the player kind of in a state, well, still like giving you things to strive for. It's like you're working a lot for little buffs.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Well, I also think when it comes to the scaling of everything, it's really interesting what you guys did with it comes to like the power system. The fact that it's kind of just a collectible item. I think that's very interesting because that means that someone who is very low level, if they put in enough effort without even reaching a higher level, they can have the best stuff in the game. I think that's a really interesting premise because it gives players a lot more room to like make their own kind of play style. You know?
Yeah. And on the same note, there are things that are harder to find. There
Yeah.
are things that you could be very lucky to find early on
Yeah.
too. Um, and as far as like arming yourself in general, the idea is the weapons are very easy to come by.
Yeah.
The things that you really work for are the like trinkets and weird clothing items,
Of course.
the aesthetic stuff that you can do.
Well, that makes sense. All right, moving a little bit towards kind of an obvious conversation point when it comes to this game. How did you feel about the giant influx of players that you got? Do you think that it made the game better or worse?
It was a good thing. So yeah, when that Josh Strife
Yeah,
Hayes video came out, yeah, we got like just a ton of people in the server. It was a cool, um, it was a cool moment, even though it was kind of like the first couple days, it was like really buggy.
yeah,
But I had kind of like moved on from this project,
of course,
a
yeah,
few years before. I'd stopped really working on it or thinking about it. I hadn't really touched the server. It had just been running like no resets or
yeah,
anything for like a few years. And suddenly it was jam packed with people. It was having all these problems, so I kind of like got to have this fun moment of like, all right, like it's
yeah,
like stretch out, like crack my fingers and like see like how much better at this I am than I was a few years ago. And I
of
was able
course.
to really like dig into like old code, kind of look around and just kind of like fix things. And I feel like the first like week or two after that happened, like I didn't really sleep.
Yeah, I
I was
get you.
just like fixing things and trying to get it in like a workable state. And I don't think I really had like a good night's sleep until I like got the thing running with like a automated restart either. So it's like all
Of
these things
course.
I was like, I need to build these, or like I like it won't exist without me like constantly monitoring it.
Yeah.
So it was real hectic at first, but I don't
Well,
know.
I mean,
Now
I
I
think
think
it
it's
paid
at a
off.
state where it could just do its thing. Yeah.
I
Yeah, yeah.
think the
Yeah, now
giant
it's just
influx
sitting
of
there.
people. Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
think.
And oh sorry.
I
The
was.
one more thing
Yeah.
though, just with that, I think the other like more significant thing that it's done is it got me and Tar Pit kind of like working together again.
Of course.
We had kind of moved apart. We both were working on personal projects of our own that were kind of different things.
Yeah.
I had been kind of working on a spiritual successor to Animyst,
Really.
and then it was just kind of interesting timing. Um, you know, Ended up talking with Tar Pit a lot again, and we kind of got ourselves set up to work on the next game together again.
Nice. How's that been? You glad to be working
Um,
together again? Like, is it
yeah,
all?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun. It's fun. It
Oh, that's
definitely
great to hear.
like, yeah, definitely, love his ideas and art style and everything.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to be working with him on this. I think it's going to make the game a lot better than if I had just like solo devved it.
Yeah, of course. Um, you were talking about how you're making a successor. This isn't about the successor, but I was curious if you had endless time, endless resources, what would you do differently if you were making an Amethyst 2? What would you change? What would you add? What new aspects do you think that you want to like create with it? Like where would you take Amethyst 2, assuming you were able to make it with endless time, endless resources?
Um, so if we were going to make, you know, an Animus 2,
Yeah,
the idea is that like one of the things we've always thought of is like we wish we had made Animist 1 a little more friendly towards towards just like a lone player.
yeah,
The game's really like geared for like fights between players to be like this this big part of it. And I think throughout the history of the game, not a lot of people really experience that due to low player base
Yeah, of
or
course.
just the vast distances between you and others. So we really like the next game. We really want to go in a direction where there's a lot of good PvE content,
Yeah,
um, but you're always in a persistent world where you can run into someone else, at any time.
I see.
So that's one of them. Just a sheer balancing of that. What I was saying earlier about the shrouding more things in secrecy. We really are determined to go in that direction. And build it from the start with like a story and a strong image of like what the world's supposed to look like.
I see. Some more
Whereas
foundation.
yeah,
Yeah,
really like more planning, more foundation, exactly.
that makes sense.
Yeah, this the first game we kind of just ran with it, and it turned out the way it did. And there's the good and the bad parts of it.
Cool.
um but yeah, we're pretty determined to make something that's funner, more fluid, has better fight mechanics, and
Yeah,
kind of just gives a good, like, almost single player in a massively multiplayer universe kind of feel to it. But definitely, like, I think the strongest points of Animyst are kind of the story and the vibe
yeah,
of it, and we definitely you know, are doing everything we can to kind of like bring that back and preserve that part of it while,
yeah.
hopefully making it even cooler.
Well, it's actually perfect that you're working on it right now on that because I was really curious actually. The atmosphere is incredible in Animist. I mean, that's undoubtable. It's constantly you're feeling the emotions of the game world through the screen. It's great. How did you get to a point where you could do that? Did it always start off just off rip when the game was like made that it had that like interesting atmosphere, the like really like nicely colored fog, the like constantly moving sky, like things like that? Were they like from the start, or is it something you had to work on and get more skill in?
Um, the the clouds and sky that we're using, we put that in at the third world. So the worlds before that didn't have that, but I would say before that we still had vibey clouds.
Yeah,
We had a kind of simpler texture in the sky that was like a quickly moving cloudscape. So
yeah,
that was kind of always a thing. Um, but yeah, I think the sky takes up like nearly half your screen a lot of the time in a first person game. So it's a big point of ours to make it look really good.
well, I think you're doing incredible. Something I did notice, I don't know if you ever noticed this yourself, but I thought it was just cool. um, the existence of the clouds in the first place make it feel so otherworldly because you get told it's like this like almost hell like place, and then you see clouds, and to me that makes it feel like everything you're kind of playing through is almost like the game is like lying to you kind of thing, and it makes it much more interesting having that because it keeps you like on edge. Did you intentionally do anything with the clouds for that purpose, or did you just want nice looking clouds?
Well, I think there's an element of being trapped in the game.
Yeah,
You're kind of in a purgatory and you have no escape, and you kind of just need to like accept it. So the clouds are another like biome of the game. Like
yeah.
I don't know if you've gone that far in it yet, but you can fly up into the clouds and there's stuff to do up there too.
I've
So like
seen very interesting Reddit posts about that. I don't know if it was Reddit forums or Discord, but I was reading about it, and
okay.
someone was talking about the fact that they were like non-existent past the clouds or something, and then more experienced users were telling them that's part of the game and to keep quiet about it. So I
Yeah,
definitely know there's
there's
interesting
stuff
stuff
in the
up there.
clouds. You can go inside them. The clouds are like volumetric, so
Yeah,
you know
really.
they're taking up actual space in the world, and you can go inside them and possibly, if you really try, take like a peek over them.
Is there anything
You're
over
not
that
really
peak?
allowed. Not really. You're supposed you could fly kind of the top of the cloud pattern if you're lucky and get yourself in a nice open spot. You could maybe like catch a glimpse of the sun.
Of course. Um, Regarding that whole area, I'm not gonna speak on the final boss. I don't know if anyone's gonna
Mhm.
watch this who wants to play the game and all that. I'm not trying to spoil anything, but I saw a Discord thing and I thought it was really interesting. Um, People seem uncertain whether the final boss was the actual final boss of the game or not. Is
Hmm.
there anything? I guess not just the final boss, but is there any boss that, to your knowledge, no one has been able to find yet?
Um, no, there is there are a couple people that have found the final,
Yeah.
but I don't know if that's the one people are referring to in the Discord.
That's it.
There's one that people did kind of refer to as the final, and then recently, after all the excitement with the Josh video and
Yeah.
all of that, I added in um, more bosses, and that's kind of
Okay.
just labeled as a secrets patch.
Yeah.
And I kind of make a point not to tell people, how to do it, but
Yeah.
we really tried to make it, feel like the players had to discover and figure out this like dark ritual to
Yeah.
making them appear. So yeah, there's content that's pretty obscured by some weird game systems, and you kind of just have to figure it out.
All right. We mentioned Josh's video twice, and I'm curious what your thoughts on it are. Do you think like it was a good review? Do you think he missed anything that was
Yeah,
important? Like, what are your thoughts?
I mean, it's a 45-minute video on, a game that I spent years to make, so it's like, of course, there's things that are missed,
Yeah.
but I thought he did it really good justice. I think he played an amount that really like boggled his mind and made it seem like a really big universe.
Yeah.
And I thought the best part about the video to me was just how like strange and hard to figure out he made the game sound.
Yeah.
Like I watched and I was just like, yes, like that's the
Yeah.
feeling. Like
That was what you were going
like I
for.
want yeah, I want you to like get a page of this book and be like, oh my god, like I need to find out like
But yeah,
what this thing does.
that's
Yeah.
what's great about the game though is every single item ties into another one, and it constantly keeps you in intrigue because you can't find any of them. Like it's
Yeah.
especially with the pages. I mean, he spoke on it. Getting one page was like he spent so much hours trying to just get one page, and he finally got it. Couldn't stand the fact that he didn't have the other seven. Like,
Hmm.
oh no,
Yeah, that keeps people going.
exactly. I think it's interesting the way you designed the game. I don't know if it was intentional, or just the way it came about, but it does constantly keep people going with just the mystery in it. And I think the fact that you're targeting that for your next game, it's gonna make it a very interesting game.
Yeah.
Um, all right, so something I was really curious about is for myself and other game developers I know, a lot of what we put in the game is reflections of what we see on a day to day life. You know, we imagine things, we think of things, we have something happen in our relationship, whatever, and games
Totally.
usually reflect that. You know, it's a very good emotional outlet. Do you think there's anything in the game that's reflected from your life that's just has a funny story behind it?
Um, that's a funny one. I think that I'm one to have like real wild dreams a lot, and I think the animist like flying and gliding into the clouds and
Yeah,
just the general like just rapid speed of movement is kind of like it's kind of like me trying to recreate like
yeah.
the dream movement that I feel like I've experienced. So that's definitely like my what's the word I'm looking for? That's just kind of like the benchmark for how I want the character to move is like how I feel like I'd float around in like a dreamscape.
Do you think you got it accurately? Like, do you think you matched it pretty well?
I think to a degree, yeah. Like you're kind of like you're kind of like sliding around, not like sliding, but like zooming,
Yeah.
and like taking these big leaps and then gliding. I think it gets that across like in a pretty cool way.
Makes sense. I
Um,
think so. I think a lot of people describe it as like a very dreamscapey kind of game. So I think you did pretty well. Okay, so aside from the rock people, which I still think is very interesting, aside from that, what other initial draft ideas like got scrapped that you think you should have spent more time on? Like what's it used to be in the game or used to be on the drawing board but never made it or got cut that you just really think could have had more potential if you had more time?
that's a really good one. Um, I think the one that everyone's always asked for more of is more spells and stuff. I
Yeah,
think we could have really um I think we could have gone out there and made them wilder than they are. Most of the spells in the game are variations of like this is a projectile,
yeah,
and this is like a AoE, like this is like a bomb from the sky, and then like a
yeah,
few heals, couple speed spells. I think there's like a decent variety, but we definitely talked a lot in the past, and there's things that I think I just never got the time to do. Could have made some real like weird dark magic stuff you can do. From like turning yourself to a shadow to like
ooh,
things that might just like launch you up in the air, or
yeah,
like trading place with another player. you know we definitely had a lot of like ideas for just really like weird
yeah.
magic, and that doesn't exist to a huge degree in Animist, and I feel like it would be cool if it did.
Well, speaking on the combat, how do you feel it turned out? Because the combat's one of the biggest ones that like I think Josh touches on is the fact that the combat feels. I think that was one of his only insults, to be honest, is that that's the
Yeah.
part that felt off. Do you think that
um
it fits what you want it to fit, regardless of if it's well liked or not? Like, do you
So
think?
I
Yeah.
think it's better now than it was when he played the
Oh
game.
yeah, of course.
That's
Well,
that's one of the things that I really tried to like dig deep and fix a lot of the like lag and desync issues that
yeah.
he was kind of having. It's not amazing still. I didn't rebuild the game, nor do
Oh
I
yeah.
have the intention of doing so. But yeah, I think the player versus environment combat is like not the most standout part of the game.
Yeah.
What I think is really good in the game and is really dynamic is, if you and your friend both like, 1v1 each other,
Yeah.
like I think that the 1v1 experience of the game is actually really dynamic and
I actually
fun.
agree very wholeheartedly, and ironically, because of the movement you mentioned earlier,
Hmm.
I think that dreamlike movement is actually it translates very well into PvP, especially in bigger open landscapes. You know.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, we really like leaned in early to like, long distances. Like we wanted you to see another player from really far away,
yeah.
have ways to like kind of track them, see them when they're a dot in the distance, and then, just zoom and close that gap.
Oh, okay.
And then there's spells that are like extremely long range, like focused energy and stuff. Like you
Yeah.
could like blast that goes like 2 miles in like a second.
Yeah. Huh. Well, that's interesting. So would you say the game was designed for more long range combat, or do you think you made it more close range?
I mean, I think you could play either way really, and
Yeah.
it makes sense to play both. It's like it's long range and close range, and you could close those gaps. There's definitely like the close range combat is kind of simplistic. It's not like you're blocking and parrying other people with swords. It's not
Yeah.
like that kind of game. But you know, it's there's a lot to do there. Running up to someone and launching a few AoE spells is definitely like a strong way to fight.
Yeah. Of course. Um, speak. So kind of based on your profile picture, when I messaged you, I realized this, and I find this very interesting. The gore in Amethyst, or sorry, Animist,
Animist, yeah.
um, it's very not horrorish. You know, it plays more into
Mhm.
the environment, plays into the world, and it feels more like a building block for making an atmosphere rather than a horror aspect. And
Yeah, yeah.
how do you think you were able to achieve that so well? Like, what do you think was a key to making gore in a game, but not making it seem too horror-esque?
Um, I for one, you're not we don't have like blood stains on everything,
Yeah,
it's
of
not like one of those like it's not like a Resident Evil type environment.
course.
Also a lot of the time, there's a lot of sunlight out, so you're not really dealing with like pitch black darkness either, which I've always kind of hated that in games.
Yeah, same.
I
I'm
kind
with
of like to
you.
be able to see. So, it's kind of like a friendly on the eyes kind of lighting,
Yeah,
um which if you're playing an MMO style game, you don't want to like burn out your retinas with like
yeah,
really bright lights, or strain your eyes from like squinting into the darkness all day.
of course. So you
um
made a lot of the game aspects to just fit longevity.
yeah, yeah, it's
Makes
kind of
sense.
like geared for an MMO player. But in general, just the vibe of it, I think we always kind of saw a little bit of humor in the art style and everything too.
Yeah,
The both the friend and cursed one player models, I think, are kind of like a little funny in ways.
yeah,
The friend has like big, like googly gem eyes. The
yeah,
cursed one just has like a real weird grin on his face. So we kind of like we're looking at like not only kind of like the darkness and the mystery of it, but also like you know we were into skeleton wars memes and stuff of the
yeah.
day. And like it was kind of like running with that idea of like, yep, this is where you go when you die. And like
I
like
see.
it's a little bit of like a tongue-in-cheekness, and like a it's there's some comedy to it, I
Yeah,
guess.
that makes sense. I think you're right though. Being able to see gore ahead of time makes it a lot less scary and feel more environmental.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
I do
there's
think that
yeah.
goofy aspect also adds to it.
Yeah, like the chickens that you'd see,
Oh yeah,
really early in the game that are like made out of human body parts. Like it's really like gross and like
yeah,
awful, but like it's pretty funny too.
yeah. Well, for sure. I mean, the chickens having real feet catches everybody off. I think that's a. It definitely doesn't feel like a horror game. It feels more like a twisted comedy kind of thing. You know?
Yeah, but at the same time, I feel like it works into the lore of the game,
Oh
that,
yeah, for sure.
it's like you're being born and put together out of like, assembly of different like body parts and stuff.
Yeah,
And it's like there are other things in the world built from those same parts too.
yeah,
It's the idea that, maybe that's what happens when like a chicken's soul floats to the bone pit.
yeah. So it's like a Chekhov's gun kind of thing where you brought up the idea that these body parts are here, so you kind of just wanted to use them and enforce that more into the world.
Yeah, and that's a big way I think of how both me and Tar Pit look at, world building, and we're really like, fixated on making good decisions like that on the next game, where, the things in the world make up everything that exists.
Yeah,
We want everything to really, really fit. We don't want there to be like loose ends or like random fantastical magic that
yeah,
doesn't tie into something that you're actually like able to witness in the environment.
that makes sense. A little bit far off what we're talking about now, but me and the other guy I mentioned, both very curious. How have you liked the direction that Amethyst has gone over the years? Because you spoke in the past about how you wanted there to be more players.
Mhm.
and it's kind of spiked during the player count. It's kind of spiked during development. So, do you think that it's gone in a positive direction, negative direction? What do you think?
Um, I think it. I think the game did good for what it was. Like when I started making it, like I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah,
Like, like really, like no clue at all. So it was definitely like a learning project, and like beyond just game development, we learned a lot about like all the other parts of making a game, the things that we didn't really think of or prioritize as much.
yeah,
I would not make a video game again that I didn't think was going to be like I didn't think was going to get like the reach it deserved. And also I would never release a game as early in development as we did with Animyst.
yeah,
We put that thing out there for players to play like so early.
yeah,
Like um and I think we're a little nuts for that. I think it worked for us because really what we needed to do was learn.
yeah,
um so it like fulfilled that part of use. But yeah, I don't know, I think like if a ton of people found it like around the time we released, maybe it would have got review
yeah,
bombed and hated. It probably didn't settle itself into like a good place until it was like already out for like 4 years or something.
yeah,
So I think that's like a big part of it. Like it probably wasn't in a position that was ready to handle people playing it until like a few years ago.
of
And
course.
once it kind of hit that part, I feel like, I don't know, as a game dev, I think I'm trying to just move on and make something that I think is better. And it's exciting that people found Animist when they did,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of the people that like Animist are gonna really like the next thing a lot.
Oh, for sure.
So
Well,
it's cool that we've basically like found a little bit of like a niche audience of like the people that are into weird games like this. And it's cool. um you know I'm like really thankful to like everyone that's played the game and
yeah,
put time in, because it really is a cool experience on the dev end to like witness all of that. It really like makes you feel like you know the time wasn't a waste.
yeah, of course. Well,
But
speaking
yeah.
about the player
Yeah.
impact, actually, I'm really curious. Player-made structures. How do you feel about them? How do you envision them, and how do you think they turned out? And do you like the way they went?
Yeah, we really wanted to lean into the build whatever you feel like put very few constraints on it.
Yeah,
I think it was good for Animist. People are able to make really like weird things. Very, very late into development, we
yeah,
had to kind of like put a few things in to limit what people could build because it got a little too crazy.
yeah,
um People get very rich in the game and they could pretty much cover the whole world and
yeah,
walls if they wanted to. So like we definitely had to put some like safeguards on stuff like that. I think for Animist it was good. It's not my ideal building system. I am not doing anything really remotely similar to that in the next game.
okay,
Though there is player building, but it's kind of a polar opposite of
yeah. Some more
how
restricted.
Animists were. Yeah, much more restrictive. But also, want to make it fun.
Yeah, of course.
But also, we really saw how a lot of players, tend to just build these like gigantic, super tall structures in
Yeah,
Animist. It's kind of the go-to. And watching a lot of people do that with the most free building pieces they could have, that really like got me thinking that well, if we're going to do something more restrictive, like that's what people want to build,
Yeah,
like a gigantic, like enormous tower into the sky.
of course. That makes sense. Um, yeah, I was also curious about just the fact that you had this world that players could actually change and interact with. Was there any other things in the drafts or that you would have wanted to release that just the more ways, I guess, for the player to have been able to control the world or an individual being able to do more, like how player building in the game was able to be pretty much wherever, pretty much whatever they wanted, kind of thing, where it's very like free and they directly change the world.
Um, yeah, I think that, we had ideas, of even like having most gatherables being like player placed early on.
Yeah,
Kind of wanted to make it an even more barren land that players populate. But what kind of ended up happening was that the gardening items in the game are kind of the most expensive stuff you could make.
yeah,
So it kind of changed this thing where, we threw around a few ideas and ended up, doing a lot more of the gathering and placeables just placed by us, the devs.
yeah.
But we did throw around an idea of a much more barren world in which the players self-populate those.
Really?
You know, yeah, where it'd be like nothing exists, and you're starting by killing the chickens to get an item that helps you craft a seed, and
Yeah,
you would populate it from there.
makes sense.
So that was an idea for sure. We probably we didn't go that way for a few reasons. You know, Mainly to make it like a quick game loop for players, so it wouldn't just be like so alienating.
Yeah, of
Um,
course. Well, having a whole map only made by players would really discourage a lot of new players. So I think this was a good mix.
yeah, yeah.
Because now this system, it's more of a exploration thing. You find a player made structure and it's enjoyable. It's not like they're the only thing around.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we like that there are things in the world that have been there for a long time, and that you could kind of just wander and find these big structures.
Yeah,
I think that adds a lot to it, this kind of like monolithic vibe.
of course, of course. I was kind of touching on this earlier, but when I was talking about the bosses, but is there any hidden things in the game that no one, to your knowledge, once again, has discovered yet? And you don't have to tell me what they are, but are there anything that exist that you're just waiting for the day that you get a Discord DM talking about it?
Trying to think. I think there's a lot of things that 99.9% of the people have never discovered, but
Yeah,
there's a couple people out there that are real hardcore and
yeah,
pester me with questions when they think they're onto something new. So they've found a lot of the things, but there's some like very hidden stuff. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say.
all right.
I think there's things that I might not even know exist. So I don't know if,
Yeah, of course.
like people find things out that, surprise me. People have like escaped the world and flown out into the darkness and
Oh
stuff.
yeah,
And,
well, that's a big one. I
who
noticed that a lot on
knows?
the Discord.
Yeah,
People love their void.
there's a lot of things like that. People have found weird tricks to the game and ways to fight creatures that I would have never thought of.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't really know. The game is limited in its ways. It's not like gigantically massive full of content.
yeah,
You can probably count the number of creature types on your hands and your fingers and toes.
yeah,
So like, it's not this like endless experience. It's a game made by two people. You know,
yeah. That
two
makes
people
sense.
that were still figuring it out on that.
Well,
But it has a lot, and there are things like the items and stuff in the game, like they're not that customizable. They're kind of just these static items, and that's going to be a lot different in the next game.
Of course.
Everything will hopefully feel a lot more fluid and not just like this item with this description, this item with this. But yeah, I think people have found a lot of it now, but
Yeah.
it's probably like 2 people have.
Okay, I see. So the general public still has a lot to find.
The general public has an immense amount to find that I think would take your average person some, many hundred hours to piece
Yeah,
it all together on their own. Yeah.
I see. All right, all right. Um, so speaking on the fact that you were talking about how you and him were new game devs. You hadn't done much before. Um, Balancing. Do you think, in its current stage, after all the updates and stuff, the game is fair and or balanced with the intentions that it's a hard game?
Yeah, I think it is pretty balanced right now. It's pretty difficult, but once you get the hang of it, you will like dominate in the world.
Yeah,
So like I think it's pretty balanced. I think maybe there's some little issues in PvP with people flying around and stuff, but I've done a few things to kind of like bring that all together. But yeah, no, I think it's like fairly balanced for what it is. I'm like kind of happy with that part of it. And that's just one of those things that you like slowly massage it into place.
oh yeah, well,
Like
balancing takes
we've
time.
probably up we've like updated the game hundreds of times over the last few years, so it's like
Yeah,
I don't know, just change it a little bit here and there wherever you feel like you need it.
makes sense. Um, Kind of speaking to the fact that you have been releasing so much updates and stuff. I'm sure over the years, as with any game, there were a ton of bugs that just occurred. Is there any bugs that became features in the game?
Uh, so the lore book, the flying in it,
Yeah,
was kind of like a dev tool that I used, and I think
really.
I hit this point where I was just like, it's so fun that like I'm just gonna make people like work their asses off to
Yeah,
unlock this. So that kind of like the main storyline of the game is,
an admin tool.
due to me. Yeah, it's like my
Yeah,
admin tool that I just like use to get around and do stuff. Figured why not let people use that.
of course. Well,
Some of the spells are a little crazy and, maybe didn't do what I thought they would do at first.
yeah,
Kind of just kept it. Yeah, bunch of stuff like that, I guess.
makes sense. Considering that the whole storyline kind of stemmed from the fact that it was just a developer tool, do you think you did good evolving it from that? Like, do you think you did good on the storyline? Do you think it matches what you wanted and your expectations?
Um, I like the storyline.
Yeah,
I'm pretty happy with how that went. If I think I was hitting this point where it's just like I could either keep going with it or I could make a new game, and I kind of
yeah,
wanted to go, route B there. But like, yeah, I'm pretty happy with how the storyline turned out. The mechanics of flying, it's like all right. I think it feels pretty good, but I could do better with it, next time. But
yeah, of
it was easy for me to just give the tool to people, and it felt pretty solid as is.
course.
Yeah,
That makes sense. I think to some degree, there's a lot more progress that can be made when you start a new project versus keep trying to perfect the old one. You know,
exactly. Yeah,
especially
eventually you have
because,
to move on.
well, yeah, by that time you'd started the project, dropped the project, picked it back up again, and then we're steadily getting back into it. So I understand after all those years why going to a new project might have been the move.
Totally.
Um, how do you feel when you play the game, and do you think others would agree on that feeling? Like, yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think I know what you're getting at. I think just as a game dev, you're the game dev's experience of them playing their own game is always going to be different than the people playing it.
Yeah,
for me, I have to get, my enjoyment out of the process of building it rather than playing it as much, though I
Yeah,
still need to play it a lot to like, know how it works and make
of
sure
course.
it's balanced and to try to get that feeling that other people would get. Tar Pit's actually better about that than I am. He tends to like make a character and like play through the game and put the
Yeah,
hours in to really like go through the exact process like another player would. I feel like sometimes I don't have the patience for that,
of course.
I think I just get a different thing out of it than a lot of other players do, which is a little bit a shame to me because I am building kind of the games that I want to play,
Yeah,
the games that don't exist that I would want to play. But once it's all said and done, I've just been, in the project, working on it for thousands of hours, and
yeah,
you kind of hit these points where it you know doesn't really hit the same way it
yeah,
probably does for others. But I feel like the response I get from a lot of people I'm really happy about, that they seem to really like the feeling that you're kind of just lost in this desert. That's definitely like the feelings other people communicate to me that they've had from the game, I feel like are a lot of the ones I really wanted to go for. So I
yeah.
feel pretty happy about that.
That's good. Um, I am coming to the end here, but something I was really curious about is given how secretive and how much there is to discover and do in this game, what are notable occasions where you were impressed by your player base? Whether they did something, found something, what were some key moments that really shocked you?
Um, I think that one of the first ones that I thought was really cool was when someone sent me pictures of an insane sky base they made.
Yeah,
And it was like build your way up from the bottom and, destroy your ramp
of
and,
course.
create this like massive, massive thing floating in the sky. Definitely thought that was a cool one.
Yeah,
Um, I think that some of the people that have found the harder to find secrets in the game, um, definitely impressed by that, because they're they're pretty hard to find, I think.
yeah,
um, I think I'm impressed with some of the people that have kind of stuck in there in the server a lot and kept the community going too. Just their like persistence and their like willingness to be there and play the game and communicate things to players that they might need to know while still doing a good job at keeping secrets.
yeah. So you think your community's developed a very good like new player entrance?
Yeah, I think they've been pretty good about that, and without giving too much away either. I think
Of course.
a lot of the people that have been playing the game a lot seem to totally understand that the fun comes from the discovery.
Yeah,
So no one's really like dropped real hard spoilers.
of course. That makes sense. Wrapping up, I have one final question. Is there anything else you want people to know about Animyst? People that stuck around, so they're clearly curious. That you just want to tell that you feel like not enough people know, or anything like that?
Um, I mean, I guess I want people to know that it like really means a lot to me that they're playing it, even though I feel like I have a lot of moments where I kind of just disappear off the face of the earth and feel
Yeah,
like I go under a rock to just like work on stuff or play video games, and you know, not always the best at communicating, you know, the the things that I'm going through or even being there for the community. So I want everyone who is there and plays it a lot and talks to people and all that to know like how hugely appreciative of that I am, because I feel like that's not something I have the means of doing on my own.
Of course.
And I think beyond that, I just kind of want people to know that, there's juicy things in the works, and I'm really trying to build this next thing for the people that have stuck around and the ones that are really like in there and playing the game a lot. It's really for them more than anyone else.
Yeah. Well, that's great to hear.
you know Definitely want to scratch all the itches. Definitely want to give those people the game that they want to play.
Get you. All right. Well, it was great talking to you, and
Yeah, it was awesome.
yeah, I learned a lot, and yeah, I really appreciate it.
Can I ask a couple questions?